floor is yours. Before I must have to give you the health warning that the views expressed by the speakers are their own, and neither their employers nor the Westwell Company of Information Technologies and subsidiaries are responsible for them. Thank you. Darika, over to you.
My story starts with a villain. Her name is Ruby Carp. She's a teenager. She lives in New York City. She describes herself as a comedian, a feminist, a journalist. She first appeared on TV when she was age 7. She's been writing for online websites since she was aged 11. And when she was 13 years old, 2 years ago, she was invited to write an op-ed piece for Mashable, one of the biggest technology sites in the world. And it was this: I'm 13 and none of my friends use Facebook. And this was during a time that Facebook had just kind of reached critical mass. Every brand, every marketer was like, gotta be on Facebook, gotta be on Facebook. Everyone in their brand was using Facebook. But people had started to notice a trend. Young people were starting to abandon Facebook. And so Ruby became the face and voice of this. And people were desperately interviewing Ruby and wanting to find out more. Some of the things that she told us in the Mashable article. One of the reasons Facebook's losing my generation's attention is because there's other networks. So when she was 10, I wasn't old enough to have a Facebook, but there was this thing called Instagram. Our parents had no idea there was an age limit, so we all got Instagrams. She also spoke a bit about you want to go to the platform where the rest of your friends are hanging out. I soon discovered that Facebook is useless without my friends. My only friend is like my grandma. It was pretty burning for old grandma. And then she talks a bit about how brands were starting to infiltrate Facebook anyway, which is feeling less cool. No offense, but when I'm looking through my newsfeed, I don't really care about Pantene's new product. And then she kind of finished the article with something I thought was really interesting and kind of summed up millennials in general. It wasn't the Facebook it was when I was 7. God, how complicated. And this is the problem that we're all dealing with, right? People are kind of falling in and love out of platforms so quickly. Just when we gear up all of our planning, put a strategy in place, we're suddenly told that your audience isn't there, or they don't like it anymore, it's not cool, or they're not using it, or they've switched to, all the teams are using Snapchat now. And this is perfectly summed up by an article that Ruby wrote a couple of years later. Oh, sorry. So there's 3 things that Ruby's article taught us. The first thing is that there is a huge choice of platforms out there. We don't live in an old media world where people read, one daily newspaper or 1 or 2 weekly magazines. People are viewing more than articles, they're viewing hundreds of multimedia pieces of content a day across lots and lots of different platforms and in different groups and communities. And at any stage, someone, tribe can pack up and move on to another platform. She also was teaching us that people, like the cool kids, like to go where the cool kids hang out. People want to go where there's people like them that they enjoy hanging out with. And sometimes, and this might not be you, but it's me, sometimes I don't always know the cool place to go to find my audience or to find the group that I want to reach. And the third thing is that people of all generations are really, really, really starting to hate ads because digital gives them so many choices. If we look at the rise of subscription services like Netflix, like Spotify, and people using ad blocker services. So they're starting to see everything that we do as a brand as brand interruption unless it becomes perfectly tailored and relevant to them. So what I'm saying is that you'll never win really. People are going to keep moving around different platforms. But that's if you take a platform first approach. But I'm going to talk you through a way that you can plan digital differently. And this is best summed up by Ruby's follow-up article when she was 15. I'm 15 and all of my friends use Facebook. Remember when I was 13 and wrote that viral article, I'm 13 and none of my friends use Facebook? Yeah, about that. So just 2 years later, Ruby was the biggest advocate for Facebook, was saying all of her friends were on it, and that she was at a different stage in her life and she liked the kind of features and behaviors of Facebook. It perfectly sums up the challenge that we have every day. So this is what I'm going to teach you. This is a 3-step planning approach. I use it in every single digital plan that I come up with. I use it in every industry sector. I've tried to condense it down to just the top headlines for you today. And the key of it is, if you take one thing away from today, is it's about a platform-last approach. If you're asking questions like, should we have a WhatsApp strategy, or what's our Facebook strategy, you're asking the wrong question. The platform comes last. That's the last thing you should be looking at. The plan never changes. You should have a constant goal for your business, and then at the last minute, you'll be able to pick the most relevant digital tool to help you get there and reach your audience. So how does that work? Step one, Warren Buffett. I'm a bit of a productivity nerd and a bit of a life hacker, and so I read a lot of stuff about, how does Warren Buffett get so much done, and how does he get so rich? And I encountered this really great story online from this guy, Mike Flint. So he's a private pilot, and he was Warren Buffett's private pilot for a few years. And he was a fan of Warren's, and he said, Mr. Buffett, can I ask you a couple of questions? Could you give me some advice for how can I have an awesome, amazing career like you did? And he said, sure, kid. This is Warren Buffett's advice. He said, okay, Mike, what I want you to do is get a piece of paper, and you can do this now, you can go home later and do it. Write down your top 25 career goals. So the top 25 things that you see as must-haves for you to view your career as a success. Mike was like, yeah, okay, there's so much I want to do, but yeah, 25, break down the list. Okay, Warren, got it. Said, okay, next step. Go through that list of 25 and pick the 5 top priorities, the things that are most important for you to reach, those goals that you absolutely must reach. Even if you miss one of those, even if you achieved 10 other things on the list, you still feel like you weren't satisfied. And he was like, okay, went through, made some choices and circled his top 5. Warren Buffett said, okay, so now you've got a list of your top 5 focus priorities. That's what I, Warren Buffett, do. I never focus on more than 5 things at one time. And I call that my A list. And he said, okay, great. So I've got my A list. What do I do with my B list, my other 20 things? And Warren said, well, what do you think you should do? And he said, okay, well, so I spend the majority of my time working on my A list goals, and then when I can fit it in, do my B list goals. And Warren was like, no, here's how it works. The only thing you work on is your A list. You put everything else aside, and when you've achieved each goal on your A list, then you can add more things from your B list, your other 20. And I think that there's a lesson for us, the brands, in that we get really easily distracted because we start off with a goal at the start of the year, and then by the end of the year, people are talking about, we want to do something else, we want to do something else. And that's when we get tempted to suddenly jump onto a new platform to try and achieve something different. So how do you focus? How do you find what your business objective is? And I'll give you an example of this. A lot of people come to me and say things like, we really want a Facebook strategy. And I say, okay, why? And they're like, well, we heard that you know about social media. Could we get a Facebook strategy? And I'm like, absolutely, why do you want it? And they're like, well, other museums have big Facebook audiences, and we feel like we should have that. And I'll be like, but why? What does it mean for your business? So flip it around and start asking yourself, what do you really need to achieve? If you put a digital plan in place, what does the success goal look like, where you're going to be going and speaking to your board and everyone's going to be going, great job, you achieved it. Typical business goals to help you out are based on customer life cycle. So customers move through different phases as they come to buy or experience products, services from us. And the first is the attention phase. So that's when, as a business, we feel like, oh, nobody's heard of me, or nobody's heard of this new exhibition that I'm running. How can I get it out there so that everyone finds out about it? I've got a new artist that I want to promote. They're a complete unknown, but we think that they really need to be there. If you are picking an objective like that, then it's totally different from if you're looking at the next stage of the funnel, where somebody already knows you, they already know what you do, but they also know all of your competitors. And they're trying to make a decision about whether they pick you over your competitor. You as a business needs to be doing totally different things at each of those stages of dealing with customers. There's the buy stage or the transactional stage, so that's just when someone comes to your exhibition or books a ticket. And then the fourth stage, which is often neglected, is the loyalty stage as well. You've probably seen a lot of statistics out there. It's something like 12 times more expensive to acquire a new customer in the attention phase, rather than just to re-engage people who've already come, bought from us, had an interaction with us, or had an experience. But your goals during the loyalty phase and how you would measure loyalty is completely different from attention. Typical attention metrics would be things like, what's our reach? What are our impressions? How big is our Facebook page? That might be valid if all you're interested in is awareness. Whereas consideration is how many, you might have 50,000 fans on your Facebook page, but if not one of them is booking a ticket, then there's something that's not working, that's not making them to kind of choose you and come and buy. And loyalty is how frequently they're buying from you, a completely different thing. So once you do this, once you get really clear on what goal it is that you're going after, it starts to become a bit easier to work out the types of digital tactics that best map with these areas. Because what happens is that you must focus strategy and tactics on just one of these areas. So you can't say, well, we want a campaign or a plan that's going to build brand awareness and build customer loyalty. You need to split those out and say, what is something that we can do that builds brand awareness, and what else is our digital strategy for building customer loyalty? And that's because different strategies and tactics are more relevant at each of these stages. Typical attention tactics that you might use. Advertising. Advertising fits really well in brand awareness. It's PPC and display, all those kind of traditional, Google AdWords type stuff that you're really familiar with. Social media ads. Being findable with SEO. Remember, this is the attention phase. People don't know who you are. They probably don't go and Google your name already. They're probably Googling things like, what's on in London tonight? Or, I'm looking for cinema that specializes in documentary film. So are people going to find you in those kinds of ways? And you might be using social media as part of your brand awareness. Whereas if you go into the consideration phase, you're going to be using digital tactics and strategies that are more tailored towards your communications, your content strategy, the sort of information you're putting out there. This is where you really think about your website. Okay, well, how am I structuring my website so that if people come there, they can make a decision that's going to excite them to come and spend money or spend time with them. And in the loyalty phase, this is a lot about how do you build grassroots communities, how do you get reviews, how do you drive evangelism. This is the main focus of a lot of newsletter and email campaigns, is just trying to keep people re-engaged with the brand. And even doing things like repeat purchase promos, so sending people mobile voucher codes and things. Mobile voucher space is growing hugely. So, but I wouldn't do a mobile voucher campaign necessarily if my business goal was about consideration, getting more people buying. So that is the typical marketing tactics. Okay, so your first step is to sit down and get really, really, really clear about what is the end goal that you're going to achieve. What does success look like? And then starting to get an idea of, okay, well, that feels like that might be a predominantly advertising campaign, or that feels like that might be predominantly a content marketing campaign. Next, you forget all about you and your needs, and you focus on your customer needs. Here's a story I learned about a few years ago that's a legend in marketing terms. In the 1980s, the British Rail account was very coveted. It was like one of the biggest advertising accounts in the UK, and it came up for pitch. The incumbent was no longer wanted by British Rail. The British Rail went to all the big agencies and said, this account's now up for grabs. And just to change things up as well, they heard about a new startup agency, and they said to them, why don't you join the roster as well and join the pitch? So the British Rail team, they went all around town and had these sort of amazing, glamorous presentations. And then they went to the small startup agency. They arrived, they waited in reception for a bit. Eventually a receptionist appeared and they said, we're British Rail, we're here, you guys are pitching for our account today. And the receptionist said, okay, yeah, just take a seat. Didn't seem very bothered. Okay. So they took a seat, and as they sat there, they had a look around and they were like, this reception's filthy. It's absolutely filthy. There were old coffee cups, there were stains on the table, someone had left a half-eaten sandwich, there was a newspaper thrown on the ground, and they were like, who are these guys? Can they not afford to pay cleaners? What's going on? So they got up and they said, listen, we've been waiting here for 10 or 15 minutes. When is this pitch going to start? She was like, can you just sit down and just wait, and they'll be with you soon. They're just getting things ready. They're just running a bit late. So they sit down a bit longer. This is nuts. Like, we have no idea what's going on. They go to the receptionist and they said, listen, are we going to start this pitch now, or like we're going elsewhere? And she said, just sit down there. Someone will come and sort it out soon. And they said, right, that's it. We're going. They all get their coats and their bags and they go to leave. And at this point, legend has it that the boardroom doors are thrown open. Out comes the pitch team with the head of the agency at the front of it. And he says, ladies and gentlemen, you've just experienced how most customers perceive British Rail. You don't give people any information, your waiting rooms are filthy and disorganised, and you don't get anywhere. You don't get people anywhere on time. You don't seem respectful of their needs. Now, if you're interested in working with us, we can tell you how to change that perception. And then, you know, the legend goes on that they won the account, everyone was happy. What I love about that story, though, is it focuses really clearly on sometimes we're so busy to do our comms campaign and do all of our great stuff and communicate our message. Sometimes we haven't checked that we're meeting all of our user needs. We haven't checked that the end user is going to be getting something that they're happy with. You know, we're hearing a lot about digital disruption at the moment. I get asked to talk a lot about how do I avoid digital disruption, really worried about digital disruption. Disruption only occurs when there's an established market, usually with a very big incumbent who has already established that market, but that for some reason they're not meeting their customer needs. And then a small company comes in, but they improve the customer experience 10 times, tenfold. They make it so much faster, easier, smoother. And they're usually using technology as one element to do that. So we look at Uber. It's not a technology company. It's not a digital company. It's a disruptor because they improved an experience that was broken. People were frustrated with getting cabs, convenience. They didn't like the price. They didn't like that they couldn't order cabs in advance, and came in and very quickly stole a market share in a market that people said was completely saturated. Other examples of digital disruptors, Airbnb. It's just a website. It's just a booking site. There's nothing new in the technology there. But what they used technology to do was to disrupt the hotel industry because people were looking for cheaper alternatives when they travel. And there was a way that they could do that. Okay, so it's just a side note on digital disruption occurs when you're not following the second step, when you're not meeting user needs. There's usually a market there that's established, people are frustrated with it for some reason, and then there's a tool that can help. But the platforms always last, right? It's not to do with that. No new technology was invented to make any of those companies come through. They just knew how to make the experience better, and then they picked the right tool for the job. So how do we meet needs? Well, let's go back to the different needs that sit throughout the customer life cycle. So we know what we want as brands through each stage here, but what does our customer want? At the attention stage, I have a need. We talk a lot about vitamin businesses and paracetamol businesses at the moment. A vitamin business is a business where you have to convince someone that although everything might be fine, if they just added this, their life would be a little bit better. A paracetamol business or a painkiller business is a business that's really targeted at, right now, I have a headache, and if you are someone that can sell me something, I don't even really care how much it costs, but I will come and have that and buy that product from you. What you want to try and do is map more into other people's existing needs. In the consideration phase, how are you helping people decide whether to come to you? Are you giving them all the tools that they would need to decide? That's really simple things like, just even are you listed on Google Places? Have you got your opening hours somewhere? So that if someone's making a decision between, hey, I want to go and see a movie this weekend, that your information is available and coming up there and helps them make a decision to come to you. In the buy phase, are you making it easy for people to buy from you? It's astounding to me how many people's digital buying experiences are so, broken. Very, very, lots and lots of clicks. A payment solution that I've never seen before, having to upload all of my details, then it doesn't work, then I'm trying to find the helpline, then the live chat window's popping up. we've got to be thinking in terms of, are we digitally just having people buy from us well? And finally, loyalty. Just because there's all of this choice in the market, it doesn't mean that people have no loyalty. In fact, we're finding in consumer surveys that it's the reverse. People are saying that customer loyalty is more important to them. And that's because of the paradox of choice, right? With an unending amount of choices, people just want to go and have a reliable brand experience, and they want to know that it's going to be a quality experience every single time. How can we use digital to reassure people and keep reminding them that they have a great time every time they interact with us, and if they come back, we can use digital to also make it a great experience. So one way that you can do that is with a process called customer journey mapping. Has anyone done this? So this is an example that I found that was a museum-specific example from the Exploratorium, which is, I believe it's a San Francisco-based gallery. And we tend to think about that customer buying cycle, and we sort of think about it in isolation, but we don't think about all the touch points on the journey, on the way to people. We kind of think about the digital experience starts maybe on our website and maybe when we walk through the door. We don't think about them traveling there on public transport. You know, like I said, are you listed in Google Places so that someone can bring up their mobile phone, the map is going to you accurately, your opening hours are there. Can they immediately book tickets online if they've just decided spur of the moment that they want to go there? When you customer journey map, you think about all of the experiences that a customer has on their journey to you, to your venue, and after they leave your venue. And then you look at all of the needs that they have along that journey and work out, okay, how can we meet their needs at each point of that journey? Sometimes there's somewhere that you can't have an impact, right? So you can't help if the tube is delayed, for example. But there are ways that you can look at building in fixes along the way that make your experience with your brand better. But here's a way to hack some human needs as well. There's a big body of research now, and when I was at Forrester, they've gone into this quite deeply, and then summarised that all of human needs kind of bottle down to these 4 key areas. And if you build brand experiences that hit 3 or 4 of these really, really deep intrinsic human needs, people will just feel like, man, that was a really satisfying experience that I had today. And the first one is just be useful. Just help people get stuff done. Just be really helpful. So many brands are trying to be creative and quirky, and they've missed out something that's really easy to do, is just be useful. You have knowledge and expertise and venues, and there are so many ways that you can help people so that they feel, yeah, when they go there, it's really useful. It's the way that you send people information. Are you doing it in a way that's as useful for them as possible, in the format that works for them? The second human need. This is the one that I see most brands going after. They go, okay, we've got this idea, we're going to do this viral video, we think it's really funny. And when I hear funny, I get a bit worried. We often try to come up with these really, really like entertaining digital communications, these all singing, dancing, entertainment communications. And it's true, human beings do like to be entertained, but the fundamental need is more about, we just like variety, we just like stuff that's different. We just like stuff that's out of the ordinary. So just doing things different from how everyone else in your market is doing things can just make people feel like, gee, I love going there. It's always a different experience, or it wasn't what I expected, but I got something different and novel, and that felt great because it was meeting my need. The third one. I love this. This is just a fundamental part of being human. Human beings love being connected to each other. We're tribal creatures. No matter how much of an introvert you may be, I'm an introvert, we all fundamentally crave human connection. That's a need that we have to meet. And this has been driving social networking growth, right, for the last 5 to 10 years. We're just loving that there's a technology that helps us connect with more human beings more frequently. If you ask Ruby and her friends, what are you constantly talking to your friends about on WhatsApp? It'll just be like, I don't know, we're just talking. It's just about connecting. And And this is where building in community, digital technologies, social media, forums, anything that's interactive can be really useful to help people either feel like they're connected to your brand or they're connected to other people who are fans of your brand. But as much as we love to be tribal creatures and we love to be connected, we have a four fundamental human needs. It's very important that we all feel like we're unique. This is people talking a lot about special snowflake syndrome, right? We're all special snowflake. We all want to feel like we're being treated like a special snowflake. And it's important that people now have experiences that feel like they're relevant and unique to them. This is driving a whole industry of personalization. We're talking about personalize, personalize, personalize. And that's because when there's so much choice out there, people don't want the generic experience. They want you to meet their needs in a way that's bang on for them and feels unique for them. So I've got a couple of examples of how this looks in practice. So this is Lowe's. They are, I think they're the world's second largest DIY or home improvement store, US based. And they're known for like little simple tips that make life better. And a couple of years ago, they ran this campaign called Lowe's Fix and Six. So there were 6-second videos because they were on Vine. The video that were on Vine is 6 seconds. And they were really simple fixes like what to do if you're trying to unscrew a nail and the metal bends, or basic plumbing jobs, or how to hang a shelf straight, or basic design tips. And they beautifully produced a series of these very high production values and put them on Vine. And they're really popular, and they're a huge success, and I believe that they were ticking off a lot of these fundamental human needs of people. They were first off useful, right? It's helping people fix things. But they were also really novel. If Lowe's had gone and run this campaign in YouTube, they would have been up against hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of other DIY videos. So there's a lot of DIY videos already out there. But they went for a new format, 6 seconds, and they went for a new platform as well, Vine. And they were one of the first brands to run a brand campaign on there. And so they got a lot of kudos from doing something that was so different and so varied. I think if you look deep into the psychology of DIY, it's about uniqueness. And that is because we all know, probably 9 times out of 10, it's just cheaper to hire a professional to come do it. But for some reason, we like to do it ourselves. I have a friend who's, I don't know what's wrong with her bathroom, but there's always something broken in her bathroom. And she spends the weekend watching YouTube videos and going to a hardware store and buying stuff and working out, and she's like, fix the toilet cistern. And I'm like, okay, but she feels really special and unique. So I think that DIY is one of those areas that when you can help people achieve something, they feel like, yeah, did it for myself. And Lowe's were really clever in that they added in another element as the second round of this campaign, which they said, okay, you guys like the campaign, now you submit your 6-second finds, and then they included those in the Lowe's Fix and Six. So people felt really connected to the brand, and they felt like they were part of a home improvement movement. This is a video, so this is probably not going to play. Oh. Sorry, it was surface, that's why I'm touching the screen like a two-minute. I don't know if there'll be any sound, but perhaps I can read it. Showing you what pieces are hanging on the gallery wall, then you can tap on it to find more information. I'll leave it there, you get the idea, but it's different. There's a lot of videos online if you want to see that practice. So what works about the Museum of Art's, Cleveland Museum of Art's Art Lens app? Well, it's really useful. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I actually still get lost in galleries that I've gone to over and over and over again. So I love this idea that built into the app is they've got like GPS positioning in all of the rooms, and it can show you exactly where you are, and you can say, okay, now I want to get to here. Or for me, now that I've got a 3-year-old, it's like, where's the toilet? Fast, we need to go. So I like that it's really useful. Super, super entertaining. I think there's a lot of novelty factor in there. I mean, if every single gallery now went and created their own unique app, I think it could definitely start to lose its shine. But they're one of the first to do it, and they've done it in a really exciting, engaging way. And it's about personalization, so it's about making the gallery experience unique to you. At the moment, in traditional gallery experiences, you walk around with one of those head things on, and then it will maybe talk about 2 or 3 paintings on the wall, and you go to another room. But you might be like, actually, I want to know more about the Anne Frank picture. Why is her hair flipped like that? Which they go in and show, and they show you kind of all the references. So it's about making the gallery experience so unique and personalised that everyone leaves feeling really satisfied. And then I've got another brand that I recommend that you check out. There's everything from Picture Houses, Picture House Cinemas. Just everything that they do on digital is just meeting a lot of needs. They're more of a specialist cinema, so they recognise that their customers have needs that are above and beyond, I want to see Spectre, what showtimes are on. They want to discover new stuff, they want to find out the stories behind things, they want to see niche stories, other films that they wouldn't get to see anywhere else. And they're using all of their digital channels available to promote that. They're all about making their members feel like they're part of a really special and unique group. Even to the point that when you go to the Picture House cinema website, they use pictures of their members, photos of them holding up why they love being a member so much. Everything that they're doing is just creating this constant feedback loop that makes their members feel really special. So they don't need to have the big multiplex audience. They're just nurturing a hardcore audience of people where they meet their needs so well that those people come back, customer loyalty, and spend again and again and again. Okay, so in summary, you follow step 1, you've worked out your objectives, then you've put your own needs to the side, if you can for a moment, and you've got to really thought about what are the needs of the customer. You've mapped their journey, and you've thought about what would they need at each point of the journey. And you've started to think about how can you build satisfaction in to such a strong degree that they're going to favour you above all others. And then you probably started to think about what's becoming obvious, then we need to do a video, we need to do an app. And then you started to work out some of the tactics that you might need to go there. But now you want to know which platform to pick, right? So finally I'm going to let you, we've come to the platform last approach, I'm going to let you into some tips for how you do platform selection. So, I'm going to show you tools, cool tools to do it, because it's impossible for me to say now that I can be prescriptive about every one of you must be using this platform. But once you've done those first 2 steps, you can start to think about, okay, we're targeting teenage girls who live in New York City, who are in middle school and like hanging out with their friends. And then you can start to use some of these tools to work out how to find them. This is one called Global Web Index. Don't know if anyone here has used this. It's been around for a while. It's like a digital media planning tool, but it's a bit more low cost than your really heavyweight Nielsen and ComScores. And you say, Chris, it's not like those huge, expensive ones. And what they do is they help you build digital personas. So you can literally go in there and say, I'm trying to target, highly social teen girls. That sounds wrong. I'm not sure anyone would build a persona like that. I'm trying to target 30-something-year-old urbanites who are interested in going out in the evening and socializing with their friends and finding new experiences. And then all of their research and data they collect will spit out little profiling, like 67% of those can be reached via Twitter, 42%. And they talk a lot about what their digital behaviors are as well. So you can start to build up a persona, something like that. So there's a bit of a cost involved in that one. It's not cheap. If you've got an agency, they might have a subscription, but it's definitely cheaper than a lot of the other media planning tools. And it gives you somewhere pretty prescriptive to work out how you can fish where the fish are going to be. But this is my favorite one, Google Analytics. People tell me all the time, yeah, we've got Google Analytics. And I'm like, are you using it for your digital planning? And they're like, yeah, we got it. It's like, how often do you look at it? And they're like, I don't know. You know, Bob's got a login, I can ask him for it. There is so much amazing insight that you can get for planning out of your Google Analytics. Even just seeing things like, what are the most popular pages on your website? You know, that's really going to show you what people are using to look for information about you and consideration. What are the top platforms that are already referring traffic to you? People are quite often astounded that you can just see what's the top social media sites that are already referring traffic to you. Or even see niche ones coming through. Or even see something like, wow, we're getting a lot of traffic from these 1 or 2 bloggers. Do we have a community of influencers here? Should we be doing an influencer program with them? So I love Google Analytics. So please start using Google Analytics more. Seriously, Google Analytics. If you haven't written it down, write it down. I put it in twice because I jump up and down and say to people all the time, there's tons of free data in there. Just tons and tons. You can even start to build digital user journeys. They've created all sorts of amazing tools, and you can find experts who kind of help you build dashboards and work all that stuff out. Or you can watch loads of free tutorials online and get huge amounts of planning and insight from them. Okay, this is a new one. So new that I haven't used it. But I thought it was interesting and might be good for a group like this. So it's called Tropical. It's Tropical.io. And there's a lot of different tools hitting the market now that's about consolidating a single user journey. So we know that maybe someone sees one of your social media ads, clicks on that, comes to the website, and maybe they phone your ticketing office, but then maybe they come in and buy a ticket. So a lot of people are looking at the huge data sets that they hold and trying to work out what are the tools that they can use to connect that. So they can find out, actually 80% of our visitors are touching Facebook at some point along the journey. Or things like, actually our visitors are really heavy iPad users. Have we been thinking about what our brand is like as a tablet experience? So what Tropical does is it allows you to plug in all the digital tools that you're already using. So if you're using social media software, if you're using things like MailChimp, Bitly for tracking links, you can connect all of these, and what it will try and do is build you a digital persona and start to tell you a little bit about who your existing customers are, what platforms, what tools they're using to connect to you. Very new, very nascent, that one, and I would definitely say, that's one that I found for you, but there might be others out in the market. And this one's a little bit left field. I could only get a slight screen grab of it. There's a lot of new tools coming out that are about content marketing analysis. So you go to a search engine like BuzzSumo or this one, EpicBeat, and you type in, okay, what are people saying about documentary films? Like, what are the top articles or pieces of media online about documentary films? And then what these tools do is they look at all of the social signals and they'll show you a list of what the most popular content is that's being shared. What I think is really interesting about EpicBeat is that you could go in and say, okay, we're really interested in the most popular content on documentary films, but on that far side there, they'll tell you popularity by channel. So they'll tell you which are the channels that are really gathering a lot of attention on topics. So I've had a little play with this, and it's really interesting. You put something in like, top 10 accounting software tools, and all of a sudden you see, Twitter and LinkedIn really pop up on the bar chart there. So you start to see what are the popular distribution and sharing channels as well, which gives you an idea where thematically things might group across different platforms. And then I think I've actually managed to do this on time. So that's it. That's the 3-step process. I wanted to give you some cool tools to take away as well, because people always love using a bit of that for planning. But you have to promise me that you don't use the cool tool first, that you leave it last. I wanted to leave you with one last thought. I love this quote from Mike Tyson. Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. That's how I feel like doing digital planning can work sometimes. You spend a couple of months putting something together, you put it out there, and then it's like, and you feel like, oh no, it's it's not working. If you are planning this way, your objectives first, and meeting their needs, it won't matter if the digital platforms and the digital audiences are shifting around. Because if you get there and the plan doesn't work, you're not scrapping the whole plan. You're just going to try and move it to a different channel, create some different assets. You've still got the same goal, and you're still trying to meet the same user needs.
So we've got questions here. So then we're going to break out into 3 breakout sessions before lunch. So any questions for Darika?
What sort of search can you put into Epic Beat? Can I put poetry in and see what
Yeah,
poetry is?
anything. What it's going to bring is the top pieces of content on poetry. So it might be things like a BuzzFeed article on poetry. It might be a YouTube video that says, watch this like 10-year-old rap poetry or so, but it will give you an idea of what's out there.
Where do you find clients tripping up with working out what their users' needs are? How good do you think people are?
I think people just forget to do it. That's all. Everyone knows their customer and knows what they need. They usually do. But they just forget to do it. They get so excited about the shiny new toy that they skip over, does anyone actually need this?
If you work in a, say you work in a venue that's like really diverse art forms with loads of possible audiences, there's a lot of challenges there with deciding, where to focus your efforts and that sort of thing. So what I'm getting at is, if you've got multiple audiences that are very diverse, how does that figure within the framework that is quite complex?
I think so. There would be a different objective and a different need for each group. So you'd be treating all of those as separate strands. I would say financially, if it's not possible to meet all personas, then you're going to have to Warren Buffett it and pick the top priority audiences
Yeah.
and just focus on them.
Yeah.
Okay, Darika, thank you very much indeed. Really interesting. And actually, whether you work in business, the arts, or anything else, I think that the lessons are good for any of us. And Google Analytics.
Yeah, definitely.
I got the message. Thank you very much. The floor is yours. Before I must have to give you the health warning that the views expressed by the speakers are their own, and neither their employers nor the Worshipful Company of Information Technologists and subsidiaries are responsible for them. Thank you. Darika, over to you.